They kept insisting it was routine training. Just another drill, just another couple of minutes rolling on the mats. But when she tapped and he refused to release, everyone knew that moment wasn't practice at all. It was a statement. He wanted her to remember that this gym didn't bow to printed rank. Out here, authority belonged to whoever struck harder and held on longer. So he tightened around her throat and kept the choke locked beyond protocol, beyond common sense, in clear view of the entire room. And when she finally rose to her feet again, she didn't shout, didn't spit anger, didn't even blink. She simply waited. 3 days later, standing before the whole compound, she didn't have to touch him. When the moment counted, she made him answer for every second he ignored her tap. With the crowd staring into the cage and a Navy SEAL positioned quietly behind her, he didn't just lose a spar, he watched his whole standing collapse. Before we show you the instant he realized he'd never step back into this gym again, and the words that cut his rank out from under him, drop a comment telling us your location. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because this wasn't payback. This was regulation doing what it does, and this time it struck harder than he ever did. The annex door hissed shut behind her. No greeting, no fanfare, just the echo of her boots on concrete and the faint clatter of chain-link fencing hanging over the mezzanine. The combat conditioning annex at Redwater Base had never been built for comfort. It was built to wear people down, and every scorched floodlight, every exposed support beam, every dent in the aluminum lockers proved it. Lieutenant Rowan Hale didn't flinch. She never did. She stepped forward with her duffel pulled tight along one shoulder, her orders tucked neatly into the pocket of her standard-issue fatigues. No trident on her chest, no ribbons to signal anything, just clean tan fabric and the muted silver oak leaf on her collar catching the overhead light like the softest whisper. Her expression gave nothing away, steady, alert, unreadable. The kind of face that made people wonder if she'd just finished OCS or already lived through too much. On the far end of the mats, 2 instructors leaned against a pile of training pads. One wore his cap backward and had a laugh loud enough to echo. "That her?" he asked. The other didn't bother hiding his tone. "Yeah, Hale, North Command compliance loop, paper pusher. Looks like she's never felt real pressure." They lowered their voices as she passed just enough to pretend they weren't talking, though she caught every word. Inside the admin office, Staff Sergeant Nolan Price barely glanced up. "Boards are posted, ma'am. Your top slot, integration rotation." Rowan gave a single nod. "Timeline. Rolling start tomorrow. Full mixed force drill. Instructor brief at Aero 700. She didn't offer thanks, just a quiet acknowledgement before turning toward the inner locker bay. As she moved through the bay, more heads turned her way. Marines finishing their cool-down drills paused mid-stretch. Navy corpsmen double-checked their med kits, and a couple of SX-4 trainees quietly mouthed her name from the assignment board as if testing how it sounded. No one saluted. This wasn't the kind of place that dealt in polished courtesies. Respect here wasn't handed out. It had to be earned. And in this annex, rank and reputation rarely meant the same thing. She reached her locker, still bare of a nameplate. As she slid her duffel inside and pulled off her gloves, a voice cut through the air behind her, casual, but deliberately loud. "Didn't realize we were getting oversight from the admin pool." She turned just enough to see Sergeant Blake Varon standing under the archway, athletic build, regulation fade, arms folded the way someone does when they've already decided your answer won't matter. His tone wasn't openly hostile, just dripping with the kind of dismissive confidence men use when they think they've already sorted out who doesn't belong. Rowan didn't blink. "Good," she replied. means you won't get blindsided. Then she faced her locker again, unshaken. The silence behind her was brief, but held the kind of hesitation that makes a line in the sand feel permanent. Everyone in this annex understood the truth. This place wasn't run by memos. It was run by sweat, repetition, and whoever owned the cage the loudest. The combat conditioning program at Redwater Base had always lived somewhere between regulation and ritual. Officially, it was a mixed-force close-quarters program to sharpen readiness across Marines, Navy, SX-4, even the occasional Air Force instructor. But beneath all the official phrasing was a different hierarchy, one written in bruises, not paper. And Blake Varon sat comfortably at the top of that list. Decorated from 2 deployments, he was lean, quick, and unapologetically ruthless. The exact kind the younger recruits feared and copied. His form wasn't textbook clean, but it was brutally effective. Elbows like metal, chokes that lingered just long enough to leave a mark while skirting paperwork. He rarely smiled, but when he did, someone usually hit the mats harder than they deserved. And even without saying it aloud, everything in his stance screamed that oversight slowed down real fighters, especially when it came in tan fatigues without a trident. From the far side of the cage, he watched Lieutenant Rowan Hale during the first 2 walkthroughs. She didn't interrupt him, didn't nitpick form, just observed with that quiet, methodical focus that made people nervous. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. "Sergeant, 3rd rotation exceeded breaching drill timing by 6 seconds. Varon barely glanced over. "Conditioning set. They needed it," she added. "Next time, log it." He didn't nod or reply, just walked past her like she was part of the wall. She didn't follow, only wrote it down. By the 3rd day, the tension had taken shape. Recruits started looking between them whenever instructions conflicted. Instructors began shifting subtle cues, a tilt of the head, a muttered, "Well," she said, not outright disrespect, but enough to create pressure that undermined without making a sound. Rowan noticed, of course, but she held her silence. At lunch, a cluster of instructors lounged along the bleachers with half-empty trays. A few sat on the mats, laughing under their breath. "She still hasn't called a full mod eval," someone murmured. "Playing it safe." Varon bit into an energy bar. "No, she's hoping the rank carries her." He gave a cold smile. "I only respect the rank someone earns." Everyone understood what that meant. To the annex, Lieutenant Rowan Hale was still a ghost, present but unproven. And if she didn't make a move soon, they absolutely would. Somewhere in the back of the locker room, a quiet recruit overheard everything and quickly looked away. At 1400, the rotation board flicked to the next update. Sparring Series Demo. Officer participation required. Lead instructor, Sergeant B. Varon. Opponent, Lieutenant R. Hale. Conditions: 30% speed, 50% force cap, 1-minute tap-out rounds. She hadn't requested it, but her name was there all the same. Lieutenant Rowan Hale stood at the edge of mat 2 with her gloves already strapped tight and her hair pulled back into a regulation braid. She wore the same light protective gear as everyone else. No added patches, nothing announcing rank except the small stitched tag on her chest. Exactly how she liked it, just another body on the mats. Blake Varon tugged the Velcro on his glove with slow, deliberate confidence. "You sure you want this, Commander?" She looked at him with a steady, even gaze. "Are you?" That earned a few raised brows from the recruits circling the edge. They paced once around each other, the faint squeak of the mat the only sound besides breathing and shifting feet. Varon threw the first move. A light, probing jab she parried easily. She countered with one of her own, then reset, controlled and deliberate. For the first half-minute, it looked exactly as a limited contact spar should, until it didn't. Blake feinted left, then closed in far harder than the agreed 50%. His forearm slammed her collarbone with weight that didn't match the rules. She absorbed it without comment, used the force to pivot, caught his elbow briefly, then reset. He smiled. She didn't. His next move came quicker. He dipped low, spun, and before she could fully adjust, his forearm locked across her throat in a clean, rear-standing choke. She tapped once on his wrist, clear signal. He didn't release. Another beat passed. She tapped again, sharper this time, still nothing. Her legs adjusted, not in panic but in calculation. She bent her knees, shifting the pressure toward her chest to buy herself a few seconds. Only then, with eyes on them and the silence thickening, did Blake finally loosen his hold. She stepped back, one hand rising instinctively to her neck as she felt the heat of the forming bruise. "You good, Commander?" he asked, casual. She stared at him. "I said release." He gave a single dry laugh. Reflex, part of the drill. No one laughed with him. Even the usual hecklers stayed quiet. The corner instructor glanced at the timer, jotted something on a clipboard that wouldn't see daylight. Rowan stepped off the mat first. Varen turned to the group. Lesson 1, pressure separates the trained from the titled. No one reacted, but the tone inside the annex shifted. The rule had been set. If she wanted to run this place, she'd have to bleed for it. After hours, the gym always felt heavier. No music, no whistles, just buzzing fluorescence and the soft smack of bare feet on old matting. The night rotation was listed as voluntary, but everyone knew it wasn't really optional if you wanted to be taken seriously. Rowan stood near the cage, tightening her wrist wrap. She hadn't been asked to spar again, hadn't been scheduled either. But when Varen called for open drill conditioning, she stepped forward instantly. A few junior instructors exchanged uncertain looks. "You sure?" one muttered. "I'm not here to watch," she said. Blake stepped onto the mat, bouncing on his feet. No headgear tonight, no body cam. System glitched earlier. The clipboards from that morning were suspiciously gone too. Only 2 instructors stood outside the cage, arms folded, while Corporal Theo Marlin filmed quietly on his phone, more habit than intention. Rowan approached. "Standard spar?" "Standard," Varen echoed with a faint grin. "Let's keep it real." They circled once. She moved sharply, breath steady. He pressed fast. A high jab, a fake left, then sliding behind to hook an arm around her middle and drag her down. She reversed, broke free, rolled, reset. But the second clash was different. He lunged aggressively, hooked her leg, and slammed her to the mat with force far beyond sparring speed. Before she could regain balance, he was already behind her, locking in a rear naked choke. His forearm slid beneath her chin, elbow tight against her throat. She tapped once. He held. She tapped the mat twice. Still he held. Her hips shifted instinctively, searching for air as the pressure cut quick and sharp. Her vision darkening at the edges. His chest drove into her back, all weight leveraged downward. Not enough to maim, but enough to end the round by force alone. Outside the cage, instructors hesitated, unsure if this was a demonstration or something else entirely. Her fingers clawed once at his forearm, then fell. That's when he finally let go. She collapsed chest first onto the mat, sucking in air with a harsh rasp, limbs trembling from adrenaline. No scream, no scene, just raw survival instinct kicking in. Varen stood over her, rolling his neck casually. "You all right, Commander?" he asked, mocking. She didn't respond. You'll figure it out, he added. This isn't an office gym. No one around them spoke. One instructor rubbed the back of his neck. Another pretended to check the exit. Rowan pushed herself to one knee, then to her feet. One hand pressed lightly to her ribs, her jaw tight, her throat darkening with bruises, but her eyes never dropped. She didn't ask for an apology. She didn't challenge anyone. She simply walked out of the cage. Every boot step behind her seemed to land heavier than the last. By morning, the bruise on her throat had darkened into mottled patches of plum and shadow, not a swollen welt, just the kind of mark that sits deep under the skin. Lieutenant Rowan Hale wrapped it with a thin layer of athletic gauze, pulled her collar slightly higher, and bypassed the base infirmary. She didn't need a medic's form. She needed answers. She entered the annex at 600 on the dot, earlier than regulation and long before the others. The gym was nearly silent, save for a maintenance tech swapping out a flickering tube light and the faint hum of the idle ventilation system. Rowan made a slow circuit around the perimeter, eyes traveling across each camera housing and every mounted motion sensor. She didn't speak or jot notes. She was simply taking inventory. By Aero 700, the first instructors drifted in. Blake Varon was among them. He didn't look at her, didn't acknowledge anything, just moved like someone convinced the situation was settled. She moved with a different sort of precision. Not stiff, not rattled, just sharpened. When one junior instructor muttered a cheap joke about last night heating up, she turned her head once, long enough for the words to die in his throat. By Odo 9:30, she was at the systems console near the admin module, reviewing internal logs. A hesitant knock tapped the side of the station. "Ma'am?" It was Corporal Theo Marlin, the one who'd filmed the drill. He looked uneasy. I figured you'd want this." He handed her a small USB stick. "Not official footage, just my phone. I didn't realize it got that bad." She accepted it with no expression. "Thank you, Corporal." He nodded quickly and slipped out. She plugged in the drive. The shaky, grainy footage appeared, 1 minute and 34 seconds of unauthorized force. Her taps, his locked hold, the exact count of seconds he kept choking her after the first signal, the instructors frozen in place. She paused, rewound, noted timestamps, then turned to the master terminal. Logs from that night showed repeated data interruptions between 1900 and 300. The body cams from Varon's quadrant were incomplete, one listed as device error, another missing entirely. She accessed the maintenance terminal next. Surveillance logs revealed that a motion-triggered unit in the far corner of the sparring annex had quietly reactivated at 22:17. Rowan isolated the clip. Infrared, silent, but unmistakable. It showed enough to confirm everything, enough to hold someone accountable. She didn't rush. She saved the needed segments to a clean drive, submitted a secondary log pull request for chain of custody verification from maintenance, and filed a performance evaluation audit request. Combat Annex Oversight Rotation. Window, 48 hours. Subject, Sergeant Blake Varon. Reviewing, Officer, Lieutenant Rowan Hale. No notes, no accusations, just procedure, exactly the kind no one could slip past. The notice went up right after morning chow, pinned to the metal frame of the instructor's office. Plain white sheet, bold text, program seal. Combat Integration Program. Performance Oversight Demonstration, 1600 hours, Friday. Participants, SGT Blake Varon, Demonstration Lead. LT CMDR Rowan Hale, Evaluator and Rotation Coordinator. And beneath that, this rotation will be fully recorded via Master Terminal. By noon, the annex buzzed like someone had run an electric current through the mats. "Why him?" someone whispered. She requested him. No way. She did. The rumor spread instantly. Lieutenant Hale had called for an open demo, and Varen would be front and center. No rank cushions, no instructor panel to buffer him. A full-speed sanctioned spar under audit conditions, with an audience. Varen read the sheet like it was a dare. He tilted his head, smirked faintly, tapped the paper with one knuckle. Guess I'm the entertainment now. His voice carried across the gear cage. Some instructors looked uneasy. Others gave knowing smirks. I'll give her something worth evaluating, he muttered. Meanwhile, Rowan moved through the main bay with clipboards and digital logs in hand. She didn't mention the spar, didn't reference the footage, didn't acknowledge the choke or the night rotation. Anyone expecting theatrics was disappointed. She updated gear lists, confirmed instructor pairings, filed another audit request for cooldown feedback. Quiet, methodical, intentional. No wasted motion, no lingering glances. Just controlled, steady presence. At one point, she crossed paths with Blake Varen at the mezzanine stairwell. He leaned against the handrail like he owned the place, arms folded, posture loose. "You sure you want me leading this one, Commander?" he asked, voice smooth. Rowan met his eyes, not sharp, not mocking. Just steady. "You're still the example," she said. "Let's make sure that stays true." He let out a short chuckle. "That all?" She gave the faintest nod. "That's everything." Then she turned and walked away, and somehow, even without a raised voice or a single thrown punch, every instructor on that floor felt the same shift tighten in the air. The fight hadn't begun, but the end was already written. By 1545, the annex felt changed. Not louder, just heavier, as if the air had thickened with whatever everyone was waiting for. The sparring cage was spotless, mats scrubbed, fresh chalk lines clean and sharp. A mobile command station sat in the corner, matte black with 3 monitors glowing softly, an audio deck humming beneath a fold-out table. 2 naval evaluators in dark polos sat behind the screens, anonymous, earpieces in, watching in silence. Off-duty instructors clustered along the mezzanine rail. A few SEC-4 candidates wandered in from the next gym pretending it was coincidence, but no one drifted back out. At 15:58, Varen stepped into the cage in full spar gear, gloves tight, shirt clinging to his back. His smile was confident, almost too confident. He paced once, rolled his shoulders, glanced toward the evaluators. "Ready when you are." From the back of the room, Lieutenant Rowan Hale entered. No gloves, no bag, just her uniform and a black data tablet in hand, her left wrist still lightly bandaged under her sleeve. She nodded to the observers, then addressed the group. "This demonstration will run through 3 standard sparring responses under controlled oversight. Sergeant Varen will lead. I'll supervise and timestamp each sequence. Recorders are live." Varen stretched his arms out. Finally, something official. The evaluators said nothing. "Begin when ready," Rowan instructed. The first 2 rounds went smoothly. Clean pivots, controlled strikes. Varen moved quickly but within limits. The evaluators scribbled notes. One gave the smallest nod to the other. Then came round 3. Varen shifted his stance, sprang in faster, feinted high, then dropped his left shoulder low, arms sliding into position for a near textbook rear choke, his weight pressing down exactly like he had 2 nights earlier. But this time, Rowan's voice cut through the speakers. Pause. Varen froze mid-motion. She lifted her tablet. Rewind playback, frame 248 through 296, audio and sensor sync. The screen behind the evaluators brightened. Footage from the earlier spar rolled. Thermal, time-coded, grainy, the choke, her tap, his refusal to release. Then the frame froze. Time between tap and release, 7.4 seconds, she said. The evaluators nodded. She tapped again. Another video loaded, this one from the unscheduled night rotation. Infrared, no audio, but the silhouettes were unmistakable. Varen clamping down on her, her taps, his refusal, the prolonged pressure. This recording came from an auxiliary motion unit that was not listed on the training logs, she said evenly. A second copy was submitted voluntarily by an observing corporal. She turned to the room. Every instructor, every recruit, every staff member. Sergeant Varen applied a chokehold beyond regulation limits twice during voluntary drills. In one instance, he continued the hold after 2 submission signals. Varen stepped forward, mouth opening. It was training. The lead evaluator lifted a hand. "You will remain silent." Varen stopped mid-breath. The evaluator turned to the screen. "This is not a misunderstanding. It is documented misconduct under live drill conditions. The demonstration is concluded." The room didn't gasp. No one clapped. The silence simply thickened, the footage hanging over everyone like fog. Varen's hand dropped slowly. The smirk was gone. Sweat gathered at the base of his neck, but he didn't wipe it. Lieutenant Rowan Hale didn't say another word. She didn't need to. Everyone had seen it. The review room carried the sharp scent of cold metal and coffee that had been reheated far too many times. Nobody shouted, and nobody needed to. At the front, behind a slim aluminum desk, sat Commander Jackson Reed, the rotation oversight lead and a veteran of 2 combat tours. His voice didn't command attention by volume. It carried weight simply because it never had to rise. Beside him sat a representative from JAG, clipboard folded, stylus tucked behind one ear, no insignia, just a quiet authority. On the opposite side of the table sat Sergeant Blake Varen, posture rigid, wrists resting on his knees, his nameplate already stripped from his chest. He wasn't wearing a uniform jacket anymore, just a navy compression shirt still dark with sweat. Behind him, 2 instructors waited in stiff silence, eyes fixed anywhere but on him, the kind of posture reserved for when you've watched someone push past the line and finally face the consequences. Lieutenant Rowan Hale didn't sit. She stood near the door, no uniform, just a plain undershirt and a lightweight training jacket, expression neutral and distant. Reed glanced down at the tablet, then lifted his eyes. The footage speaks for itself. Varen didn't argue. He didn't shift. He didn't even breathe differently. Reed continued, "You were expected to demonstrate regulation. Instead, you used force without tactical purpose, maintained a chokehold after a submission signal, and ignored TAP protocol on a superior officer." He looked directly at Varen. "You're not facing court-martial, but you are finished here." Blake's lips tightened. A muscle jumped in his jaw, but he stayed silent. Reed went on, "You are hereby relieved of duty at this installation. Your certification as an instructional lead is suspended, pending final review. Discharge proceedings are recommended under Article 92. No one in the room reacted. The JAG officer slid a folder forward. "Sign the top copy. Leave the rest." Varen took the pen. His hand shook, not from fear, but from the realization that this wasn't just punishment. This was a reputation collapsing in real time. He signed. Reed looked to Rowan, offering a small nod, not praise, not approval, just acknowledgement. She returned one once. Varen stood and walked out, no cuffs, no escort, just silence trailing behind him down the hall. Rowan didn't follow. She stayed where she was, still as stone. By Monday morning, the annex looked identical. Same mats, same chalk lines, same sweat-stained bins, but the room itself felt different. Not just quieter, more aware, as if the walls had soaked in what happened and weren't letting it go. Lieutenant Rowan Hale stepped in at 0645 sharp, boots clipping neatly along the tile. She didn't speak or check the roster board, simply walked through the locker bay with her usual efficient calm. But now, people stepped aside. Not out of fear, but respect. No jokes whispered as she passed. No subtle pushback when she gave directions. When she corrected a grappling transition on Mat 3, the junior instructor nodded immediately. On the mezzanine, 2 recruits whispered as she passed underneath. "That's her. Yeah, the one he... Just focus." She paused near the cage, the same place she'd sparred, the same mat where she'd been pinned, ignored, choked until the world blurred. The same cage where he'd smiled like it was a game. Now it stood empty. She stepped inside alone. No audience, no cameras, just her. She moved slowly around the perimeter, tracing the shape of the mat with deliberate footsteps. At the center, she stopped, turned outward, and stood still. Across the gym, the door opened. Varen walked in, not in uniform this time, just civilian clothes and a duffel slung over one shoulder. His eyes scanned the room. No one greeted him. No one stood beside him. He didn't approach Rowan, didn't speak. Their eyes met once. She didn't blink, didn't move, didn't smirk. He broke first, turned, pushed the door open, and walked out without a word. It closed softly behind him. Rowan exhaled once through her nose. Not relief, not victory. Just rhythm returning. Behind her, one of the SEC-4 recruits broke from warm-ups and jogged across the floor. He slowed as he approached the cage, paused at the edge of the mat, and gave her a small, respectful nod before jogging back to his group. No applause, no statement, just a quiet acknowledgement earned the hard way. Outside, the first light of morning stretched over the compound, long amber bands cutting through the upper windows of the annex and washing the mat in warm slants. Dust drifted in the still air, hanging there like even the room itself had paused long enough to take in the weight of everything left unspoken. Lieutenant Rowan Hale stood near the mat's edge, both hands wrapped around a steaming mug of black coffee, her gaze fixed on the floor. She hadn't moved much since morning drills ended, handled rosters, checked a gear log, and then simply stayed. Senior Chief Arlo Maddox, who'd been mostly absent the past week, stepped into the bay from a side entrance, sleeves rolled up, clipboard tucked under his arm. He stopped a few steps from her. "Didn't think you'd hold back that long," he said evenly. Rowan didn't look at him immediately. When she did, her voice was soft. "I wasn't holding back." Maddox raised an eyebrow. "I was watching," she added. "Discipline isn't loud." He nodded. "No, I suppose it isn't." Their eyes shifted to the cage. Empty now, the mat reset. Maddox exhaled slowly and stepped closer, folding his arms as he looked with her. "I've seen people try to force respect," he said. "Shout for it, demand it. Never seen someone take it back with a screen and a timestamp." Rowan's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "I didn't take anything," she said. "He gave it away." That was all. No lecture, no doctrine, just truth. Maddox hummed quietly in approval, tapped his clipboard against his leg, and turned to leave. A new group of recruits filed in behind him for the next rotation. A few glanced at Rowan, and 1 or 2 nodded. Not out of obligation, but because they finally understood what silence could build, and what discipline used correctly could dismantle. Rowan took one last sip of her coffee, set the mug aside, and stepped toward the next task. No elevation, no announcement, just presence. If someone choked you out in training just to prove they were tougher, would you stay silent or hit back the moment you could? And do you believe discipline, not anger, is what defines a real leader in a fight? Drop your answers below. We read all of them. Then hit like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss a story from Major Tom's Tales. And if this one got your heart moving, share it with someone who still thinks restraint is weakness. By now, one of our other stories should be popping up on your screen. Go ahead and jump into the next one. We'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place.